CNI days was to work with our ELL kiddos as they are learning. We had slack off in our growth last year, so our kids did not make the growth that we needed them to. So this year, we're just really focusing on it. That was one of the things I asked you when you went to CNI days. Hey, really focus on things that they say that might help your ELL learners. That was one of your main focuses. So today, Janie, I asked Janie if she would come in and just give you some instructional strategies to help you in your classroom. Not all of you have ELLs in your class, and I know that, but these are best practices. So they really work for anybody, especially if you have a lower level learner. They're just best practices. So she's going to give you some things to fill that toolbox today, and I think she's going to touch on the seesaw thing. But other than that, Janie, it's all yours.
All right. This morning I sent out an email asking you to take a quick survey, and I think there's some interesting results in that, and we'll take a quick look at those. The first question was, have you attended Siop training? And I can see that more than half of our staff has never been to Siop training. And that could be partly why our scores maybe dipped a little bit. But Siop is a really good training that talks about best practices, and we're going to review the components of that today. I asked how often you check in with your ELLs to see if they understood directions. And most of you are doing that every day or multiple times a week. Some of you are only doing that when they ask questions. And even though they may seem like they understand, it's always a really good idea to go to your ELL students, especially the ones that are not at the advanced or advanced high level, and ask them to repeat what the directions are to you. That's a good way to get them speaking and to make sure they understood what you said. So many times when I'm doing push-in, I'll sit with my kids and they don't know what the instructions were, even though you just gave them. They need to hear things more than once most of the time. Another question was how you determine their level of English fluency. And only 38% are using your PLDs to adjust your approach. And that's what our state requires us to use to rate their speaking and listening and reading and writing. So if they're not matching what's on those descriptors, that's the best way to determine how they're going to progress on that state test, is using those descriptors. All of the other things are good ways to determine as well. Please use a lot of things, but definitely use those PLDs to determine your levels. Almost half of our staff either didn't know or thought that you would be learning disabled if you sat in a classroom where the teacher is speaking another language that you don't know. If you don't understand a language, that does not make you a learning disabled student. I feel like I'm a fairly intelligent person. My intelligence won't change if I'm listening to another language. I may not know what they're saying, but it doesn't make me learning disabled. So that's something important to remember. Your students, though some of them are learning disabled, just speaking another language is not what makes you learning disabled. And most of you felt, or half of you felt, that you knew how to tell the difference. And I do have a chart at the back of your handout that will help with that as well. How to tell the difference between a learning disability and a language difference. This is a chart of the number of languages we have in this school. We have 201 students that speak another language, and we have about 32 languages. Does anybody know how many of those languages are students that are ESL? We have 19, I think is what I counted, 19 languages of students in the ESL department. So the ones that speak the other languages that are not counted are either students who have exited from the program, they're already fluent, or they never qualified to begin with. And our goal is to increase students' ability to speak, listen, read, and write fluently in English. Part of the problem is the TELPAS testing. only second grade on up took the online test for reading, but now it's online for listening, speaking, and reading in 2 through 12. And most of us probably don't know what that test looks like, and that's also an issue. It's also very long, which is hard on our second graders in particular. So we're going to take a quick look at what this test looks like. You have this test nav icon on your computer. Some of this test is very easy. This is an example of a listening question.
Click on the bowl of fruit.
And that seems super easy, but if you didn't speak that language, it might be a hard question for you. So some are like that.
It is almost time for dinner. The children watch their father and mother cook.
When I did this practice question with some of my students last year, even the high English speakers, some of them missed it because they didn't think about the word children, meaning more than one, or they didn't think about it being, they watched their father and mother cook. Some of them picked the one where the kid was cooking. So it's a listening, and they can play the questions as many times as they need to. So it's not like they just hear it once and have to pick. If they're not focused on listening to what the question's asking, it would be an easy one to miss. They have some matching. And then they have some that are like YouTube videos.
The students in Miss Sobel's room are getting ready to take their class picture.
So we won't listen to the whole thing, but it tells the whole story. And they have to listen to that, and they can also, just like a YouTube video, rewind and play again. Then the questions are read to them.
What is Sanjay's problem in this part of the audio? He does not.
And it will go through and read all of the choices as well. And it also gives them instructions to rewatch a certain part of the video in order to answer that. The last question is an example of a speaking question.
Describe how Sanjay feels at the beginning and the end of the story. Explain why his feelings change.
So that's a 3-part question. They have to tell how he felt at the beginning, how he felt at the end, and then they have to explain why his feelings changed. That's a lot of information to put into words, and then they have 2 chances to record their response. So they will press the red button, and then they have, for short answer questions, about 30 or 40 seconds, and then for long answer, about a minute and a half. And they will record their answer, and when they have until that blue bar runs out. And when they're finished, they can stop it, and they can listen to the red button. And then they have, whoops, I forgot to answer the question. So they can delete, if they don't like their first one, they can delete it. And it will double check with them, are you sure? Yes, I want to delete it, I didn't answer the question. And then they get one more chance. But if they mess the second one up, too bad, so sad, it's over.
That's scary.
So
Based
they
on
only
their
get 2
CSAM
chances, so
explanations.
they get to pick between their best one. I see Miss Ganwin's face, and that's my face every day. It's not an easy test, y'all. It's not easy at all. Plus, we're putting a set of headphones on this kid and saying, here, do this test online. When that's not the normal way that we have them speaking. And I think that also has played into how the scores have gone. They also have pictures where they have to tell the story. And it has to be long. It can't just be they were playing on the rug and then they ate. It needs to be detailed about what's happening in the picture. Mom was setting the table and she told the kids to get ready for dinner. They were playing peekaboo on the rug. Blah, blah, blah. You know, they need to tell a detailed story, and they can write it out. They can write out their story before they speak it. But then they need to be able to read their own writing and not sound like they are reading, because then that's not going to be fluent speaking either. So that's just so you'll know they can write it out, they can take notes, but it needs to be fluent when they speak the answers. This question last year threw a bunch of my students off.
What question is the woman probably asking herself?
I had a third grader who looked at that and he said, she's asking how tall that is. Which she is looking at, but we have to think about what's the main thing in the picture is the umbrella. And so the questions could be anything about, is it still raining? Do I need my umbrella? Should I take the bus or walk? Something related to the main thing in the picture. And they have to speak their answer. Some will have 4 choices. They have to listen and see which one matches the picture. This is another long story they listen to, and then they have a long question at the end.
Imagine that you are trying to set a new record for the world's largest pizza. Explain how your pizza would be different from the pizzas described in the audio. What ingredients you would use. Who would help you make the pizza?
So again, it's multiple parts. And the videos talk about different pizzas that won awards. So if their pizza is different than the ones in the video, then it can't be the world's longest, or it can't be the world's greatest surface area, which are 2 of the ones that the videos talked about. It has to be something different. And then it needs to be reasons why. Like when it asks who would help you make the pizza, when I go over this with them, I say, you can't just say mom. Why are you picking your mom? Is your mom a great cook? Why are you picking your friend? Is it because your friend is always there for you when you need them, they're responsible, a hard worker? You know, you have to have them justify their answer. Here's a compare contrast question.
First, describe at least 2 ways these pictures are similar. Next, describe at least 2 ways these pictures are different.
I had a student last year who looked at this, and this was a student that was in 3rd grade last year, looked at this and said, one is peach and one is rainbow. So we had a long discussion about what's in the picture and using academic vocabulary like habitat. One's in its natural habitat, one's in an urban setting. So they're using that academic vocabulary. They need to be practicing using that so it can help their scores. And not just their scores, but help their ability to speak intelligently. So hopefully looking at those examples helps you have an idea of how they're tested. Siop. So for those of you who've never heard of Siop, Siop stands for Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol. It's a research-based and validated instructional model that has proven effective in addressing the academic needs of English learners throughout the United States. And just as Ms. Fletcher said, it's solid teaching instruction for every kid. It's not something that's specifically for an ESL student. So that is who we're targeting right now to help. It helps all of your kids. It has 8 components: lesson prep, lesson delivery, building background, comprehensible input, strategies, interaction, practice and application, review and assessment. And then once you get to that review and assessment piece, you start over. You go back to planning to make sure that you're catching the things that didn't work the first time, just like you do every day. In your packet, you have a sheet that tells what all the components are and has a little blurb about each one, so you can read those on your own. We have a 3 strategies that we're going to look at today. This one here is called Expert Stay in Strength.
Offering English learners the opportunity to interact with one another not only provides them an opportunity to practice use of accent English, but it also lets them express themselves in a different way than just simply always writing answers. So what I'm going to talk about is the importance of the expert stay straight process. And this is one of Kagan's cooperative learning structures. The teacher will select a topic for the students. in the case that I'm going to illustrate is pollution is the topic. You would have each group of students work on a different aspect of the topic. So the important part of this is to explain the procedures to students and then model. It also really helps to have the steps written for students to see, because if they've gone through the first step of the process and then they forget what you told them or even what they saw, it's written for them to see. So in the way that I'm going to show it, again, there are many variations, but the way I'm going to show it is that you put students in groups of 3. And then each student is going to work, the groups of 3 will work in small group, and of course these can be larger groups. So they will work in their small group on the assignment. So for example, the topic is pollution, and each group will get a different aspect of pollution. So maybe one group will talk about air pollution, the causes and how that can be reduced. Another group will talk about water pollution, land pollution, noise pollution. So each is going to investigate, learn about a different aspect of the topic. And then the teacher will give a question to guide them, of course, something like, what are some causes of pollution and how can it be reduced? So they're going to work on that in their group. There are working groups, and the topic, of course, pollution. Each shape represents a different group, and that's important because as they move around, you'll see why I have them in different shapes for the purposes of illustration. The black mark represents a chart paper, post-it paper, something. So the first thing they do after they have been given some time to investigate the topic, come up with the answer to the question, then they number off 1, 2, and 3. Each student in the group numbers off. Then the first change is that student number 1 becomes the expert. So student number 1, who was studying land pollution, that first group, he stays at the chart paper to teach the others that come. Students from another group move over, students 2 and 3 move over to his group, and the same thing happens clockwise around the rooms. Now student number 1 from each group is going to talk about their particular aspect of pollution. So the one group is going to be, student number 1 will be talking about water pollution. What are the causes? How to reduce water pollution. Student number 1 that's talking about air pollution will be telling the other students from the other group about it. So they're hearing about that aspect of pollution for the first time. Now they need to pay very close attention because they are going to become the next expert. So as you see in the next structure, again, people rotate around clockwise, but in this case, student number 2 stays behind and now is the expert on air pollution, whereas that student was actually in the land pollution originally. So this particular expert stay stray is very motivating for students because they know they have to be the expert. They'll take their turn of being the teacher or the expert. So they have to not only listen carefully to the presentation of the student who is the expert that time, but they need to take notes. They're motivated to ask questions and so forth so that they can feel confident when it's their turn. And the process just continues until everybody has had a chance to be the teacher. Once everyone has circulated around and has had the chance to be the teacher, it's always good to have a summary activity. And that just reinforces the content and language objectives and why it is that you did this activity. We don't want...
So we won't listen to the end of that video, but I think you get the idea that causes every student in your groups to have to listen and speak about a different aspect of that topic as they go around to each group. So if you have more than 3 kids per 4 groups, most of us have more than 12 in our classes, she said you can't put more kids in the groups, and that's okay. But as the teacher, if you need to hone in on your ESL kids being the speakers, then you make sure they get the right number to move from one group to the next so that you're ensuring that those students have an opportunity to practice that academic language, both listening and speaking. This is a quick one that helps with past tense and review.
This is a really fun technique. It's called Oh Yesterday, and it's a great way to connect with the building background component of the Siop model. This is a very fast, fun little activity where the students, one student is selected to start to talk about one thing that he or she learned the day before. But we're asking the teachers to encourage the students to do it in a theatrical manner. So they might say, oh, yesterday we learned that cells divide through the process of mitosis. And they might take a bow, they might pretend they're singing an aria, they could talk in a loud voice, they could talk in a stage whisper, but the notion is just to make one quick statement, something they remember that they learned the day before. Then the student might choose another student in the class who would also say something new that he or she remembers and learned the day before. I've seen the teachers do it in a couple of different ways here, where the teacher selects which students would speak, or one student then chooses the next student who chooses the next student.
Some of you do morning meeting where you let the kids give some feedback. That might be a good place to use that activity and make sure they're using that past tense vocabulary in this is called Shades of Meaning.
A wonderful vocabulary technique that we use also as part of our building background component is called Shades of Meaning. And you can see that these are paint chips. You can get them in any hardware store, paint store. But what's important here is to think about any individual paint chip. Those are all of the same color, but they've either added black or white to the base color to increase or decrease the intensity. And that's really the key piece of information about the Shades of Meaning technique. It's to help students understand synonyms, but to recognize that not all synonyms are equal, that they may mean a little bit more or a little bit less. So it's a wonderful way to have students think about words and how they are related in similar meanings. What we can see here would be, for example, the word hungry. You might say to a student when they come into class, are you feeling hungry? And they might say yes or no. But at the end of the class, they haven't had any food yet. Maybe they're more than hungry. Maybe they're starving right now. And suppose they go through school and things are very busy and they actually don't make it to lunch. So in the afternoon, class comes along and they're just feeling famished. And of course, as a teacher, when your students are famished, it's hard for them to concentrate. But at the end of the day, they're still waiting for some food and now they feel ravenous. So all of these words have to do with degrees of hunger, and they are related, but they signify slightly different meanings. And I think for our English learners, particularly those that we are moving up to advanced levels of proficiency in English, learning about these words and seeing the value of different word choices can really help advance their proficiency.
I also have several books in my classroom that you are welcome to borrow and use from that are called vocabulary ladders. And it's a very similar concept, though sometimes they have antonyms as well. And so it'll start with cold and go to hot, and they have to arrange the words based on the coldest to the hottest or the other way around. That's just an example. But I have 2 or 3 of those books at different grade levels. And I know my adult learners love to do those, and they work great. It's a perfect way for teaching synonyms. This link I'm sending you in an email at the end of today's activity. It has 99 ideas. And I have several books that also go through these in detail. I know you have so much extra time to read, but these are great ideas that are activities from Siop that will help your English learners and all of your students. Now, I know you have been working on Seesaw, but I'm not sure if all of you know exactly what I'm doing in Seesaw. But I'm putting together a journal for each of our students that shows how they are responding to questions. That way, when it's time to rate them on their speaking, and we use those PLDs to determine their speaking levels and to figure out what we need to do to adjust our the way we're asking them questions and how we're supporting them, you can go back and look at them. So everybody has their folder with their login. All you have to do is log into Siop with that and pull up the kid. You don't have to do it right this second, but I will show you an example of a kid who has been working with it. Jenny, I love that you're using Siop. Thanks. How letting me log in? Oh, here. Now, like, you can get used to it. Does someone have their kindergarten login that I sent out? Yes. Yes. Did somebody bring me this kindergarten one? So this is how you can log in as a student. Log in as a student. And choose your student's name that you want to look at. And then you can see we did this one in October, we did this one in September, have a couple in there from September.
Where does this one go?
Maybe category
Goes in the big category. So say the giraffe.
belongs to
Start with the giraffe. Start with the word the giraffe.
the last belongs to the big category. The big category.
Because
It's big.
what's this right here?
Cat.
Is it a cat or a kitten? That's a baby kitten. Okay? So the kitten
Belongs to the mouth cat.
because
Because this is big.
so put it.
So he's a little difficult to understand, but he was using the vocabulary that I gave him. The giraffe belongs in the big category because it's big. And I had a sentence stem. I know kindergartners can't read those kind of words on a sentence stem, but it was amazing to me how it kind of worked almost like a puzzle, because I showed him, this says the blank, and I put the giraffe at the blank. The blank belongs to the blank category. And when I pointed to those pieces, he was able to say it because we had practiced the sentence, but it's like he has that knowledge of words have meaning, and he knew where to fill in the blank, even though he wasn't reading the word category. He was able to repeat it. And so he learned that vocabulary and was able to sort the pictures and use a big sentence for a kindergartner. So when it's time to go back and rate them, this will be a good way to see how they speak.
Okay, your turn. Tell me what's happening. What are they doing? What do they have?
Water balloon.
Water balloons. What are they going to do with them?
Furniture.
What?
Water balloons, throw at each other. So he's thinking about it. But this would be a more beginning level student right now, beginning, early, intermediate. But he's able to go ahead and give those answers. But this will help you see the kind of support that they're needing. And it's just a great way to go in and see what your kids are doing in ESL. We have other resources to use. We have Raz Kids Plus with the ELL edition. And you have that Google sheet that has the logins in it. I have two accounts. There's Creelan J and J Creelan 1. The J Creelan 1 account is the one that has the ELL edition with it. And one thing that you can do, there's a million resources in Raz Kids. So many, it's overwhelming. But one thing you can do is go to the ELL based on last year, and I have 97 students, I think, so please double check that I moved all their levels to the right place. It will be easier for you to know their level and make a quick adjustment to that, so that when they're reading books at home, they're at the right level for them. So if you will do that, I would appreciate it. Lexia is another resource that we have. And I noticed when I log into resource, we have a ton of kids that are in the red. And in that red zone, that tells us that they're not projected to meet their growth by the end of the year. And when you go into Seesaw or go into Lexia and you click on the little tabs that looks like a person in front of a piece of paper almost. Those are lessons that you can print out. And I'm trying to do that as well in my groups, so we can work together where you can print those and deliver those lessons, and I can do that also, and hit those skills that those kids are struggling with, because that's when those lessons will pop up. And they're not just the online things, they're actually person-to-person lessons that you need to sit and go through with that child so that they can move forward in the program. Because there's something that's causing them to not move ahead, and that's when those lessons will pop up that they need something in person. And I know that it's difficult to find time to get all these things in a day. We're all pressed for time. I think that's also a reason that we sometimes know our kids are being successful in the classroom, and we don't always take time to listen to them speak. We try to rush them. But it's so important to make sure you're giving that time to those kids to use that academic language and make sure they can do that. So a quick activity. I want you to just listen.
तीन भालू की कहानी। एक जमाने की बात है। तीन भालू थे। वे एक लकड़ी के मकान में साथ रहते थे। बड़ा भालू बहुत ही बड़ा था, दरमियानी भालू दरमियाना था, और छोटा भालू बहुत ही छोटा था। बड़े भालू के पास बड़ा प्याला और कुर्सी थी। दरमियानी भालू के पास दरमियाना प्याला और कुर्सी थी। छोटे भालू के पास छोटा प्याला और छोटी कुर्सी थी। बहार की शुरुआत में तीनों भालू बाहर निकले। वे लकड़ियों के साथ खेलना चाहते थे।
Okay, turn and talk with your neighbor about the story. Turn and talk about the story. Come on.
Blah, blah, blah.
What was it about? Who were the characters? What are they doing?
Well, he talked about the dog. Is it French? I don't know what it was.
I hear lots of people talking about the language, but I don't hear anybody talking about their characters.
African-ish?
Maybe African. Sometimes African sounds fancy. Yeah.
And I think it's too slow.
Yeah, how do you do that? Do what? We're going to do
Get on baskets.
Oh, we
तीन
can help
भालू की
you.
कहानी। एक जमाने की बात
Honey
है।
is what I heard.
तीन भालू थे। वे एक लकड़ी के मकान में साथ रहते थे।
I thought I heard honey.
बड़ा भालू बहुत ही बड़ा था, दरमियानी भालू दरमियाना था, और छोटा भालू बहुत ही छोटा था। बड़े भालू के पास बड़ा प्याला और कुर्सी थी। दरमियानी भालू के पास दरमियाना प्याला और कुर्सी थी। छोटे भालू के पास छोटा प्याला और छोटी कुर्सी थी।
Are they on basket?
Now turn and talk about the
Yes.
characters in the story.
The three
It's a little easier when you have the picture or the video to go with it.
There's a family of bears.
Three little bears.
They look like they're all men.
I know they did. I think so. What'd you say?
And
They all look like they're boys.
it's Papa Bear,
Papa Bear.
two Mama Bear, two baby bear, and the baby bear. I know, I'm sleepy. And I'm not ready for it.
Did you and Ashley set up your res kits?
I just did right.
Well, we have ours set up and then we have extras on our account. So then she has an account, so you need to just, it was easy to pair with another teacher, and then whoever's left over will give all the extra seats too.
urgent video. But they need
They just need
pictures. They need those pictures
everybody.
and videos. And they
There's
need
room for
time.
everyone.
Oh, there is?
Yes.
Nobody in here became a learning disabled person
I don't know.
Because it's 36
just because you
times
couldn't understand that video.
3 minus all the ESL kids.
Yeah.
This timeline is a little stressful to me.
You have to show me how to do
until
it.
May,
Yeah,
like,
it's really
we
easy.
start. We will be testing TELPAS in February and March.
I don't know.
And that is the point at
I
which
don't
they'll
know.
be taking that online test. So we have about 5 months, and that also includes Christmas and Thanksgiving holidays,
know.
where they'll go home and probably speak their native language all that time. And then we have several students who go missing sometime around March because they go off to another country, where they're probably most definitely going to be speaking another language when they're gone, and missing school at the same time. We can get this done if we just do the right thing. And the solution is you need to be intentional about how you're getting that information from kids. Just think about the way you're talking to your ESL kids and what you're expecting from them. The content needs to be the same. Accommodations are ways to support. It's not a way to change the curriculum. It's just a way to support them. And I will be sending an email in just a second where you have an exit ticket. Does anybody have any questions? No questions for me?